You're listening to Defending Faith, Family, and Freedom, featuring Gary Bauer, Senior Vice President of Public Policy at the Dr. James Dobson Family Institute. And now, here's Gary.
Well, welcome to this weekly podcast sponsored by the James Dobson Family Institute, Defending Faith, Family, and Freedom. I'm Gary Bauer, Senior Vice President for Public Policy at the Institute, and it's always a pleasure to be able to spend some time with you each week as we talk together about what we need to do to protect our families, to protect our religious liberty, and ultimately to protect the great country that we were blessed to be born in. I was thinking the other day, and Dr. Dobson and I have talked about this periodically. Around 30 years ago, Jim and I wrote a book called Children at Risk. Dr. Dobson, of course, has written incredible numbers of books. I don't even know what the number is up to now. And they've all been bestsellers, which is a record that anybody would envy. Children at Risk did okay. I think it was on the bestseller list for a week or so, but the subject matter was a little heavy. And I was reminded of that in recent weeks when we see around the country this really incredible revolt of parents battling local school districts, school boards, the teacher unions, et cetera, over what's going on in our classrooms. And the reason I thought about the book that Dr. Dobson and I wrote is that the whole subject of children at risk was that there was metaphorically a great civil war over values raging in America. And on one side, there were millions of people, hopefully like you, that begin with the idea that God is. And believing that God is, that requires us to take certain positions on a whole host of issues, particularly as it revolves around children. And on the other side, and again, I'm sort of generalizing, but on the other side, generally, our opponents are very secular people, in some cases radically secular people, many of whom believe or begin from the idea that God isn't. And that drives the positions that they take on many public policy issues, and particularly what we ought to be teaching children in a free society. So Dr. Dobson and I argued in the book that in this great civil war over values, the winner would get our children and would have the ability, the right to teach them what to believe about life and death, love and sex, freedom and slavery. So we wrote it 30 years ago, and you probably can guess what happened. The folks on the other side of our worldview, they were not happy campers. There were a lot of editorials attacking the book. We were called all kinds of names, religious extremists, the radical right, all the rest of it. We were attacked by the LGBTQ plus community that somehow argued that the book was anti-them. Radical secular groups, atheist organizations, all joined in. Now, a lot of Christians loved the book. Dr. Dobson has had a massive following on radio for many, many decades. Many of them, of course, loved the book, went out and bought the book. But I have to be honest with you, among the critics, and at the time it was kind of heartbreaking for Dr. Dobson and I both, among the critics were some Christians, some pastors, some church elders. And it was interesting to see what the core of their criticism was. We would get letters saying, "What are you doing? You're going to harm the cause of Jesus by writing a book like this. You're dividing people. It's not showing the love that we are called to show." Others said, "Wow, what a fear-ridden book. This is alarmist. I mean, you're predicting things that are never going to happen. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to scare people?" And, in recent years, as I've taken a look at the book again, and Dr. Dobson has too, we've talked about this. I mean, some people say the book was prophetic, but to be prophetic, you have to be actually right. And in a way, the book was wrong, but not in the way the critics said it would be wrong. This culture, this society, what's happening to our children has gone way beyond what we predicted in the book. So, I remember at the time in the 1990s, that book came out in 1990, over 30 years ago. One of the controversies at the time was, could a teacher bring a Bible to school and sit it on her desk? Not read from it, just sit it on her desk. And then at lunch, while she was enjoying her own private time, what if she read the Bible and students saw her? Well, there was a controversy all the way back in the 90s about whether that was a violation of the separation of church and state. I mean, even then it was getting a little crazy. But then it went on, you may remember this because these controversies continue to some extent even now. When a student has done really well in school and in their senior year, they're named the valedictorian, the best student in the school, in the senior class. And often schools will say, well, you, as part of the honor you get for being number one in your class, you get to do a speech on graduation night. And for years, controversies in the 90s and coming into the 2000s, controversies broke out because some of those valedictorians in their speech wanted to say, thank God for my parents and for this school and for my teachers. And they were often censored, even in the 1990s, by school boards and principals and so forth. Now, look, I wish those were the things we were wrestling with now. I mean, we've won a lot of those battles. But the battles now are not over whether a teacher can have a Bible or a valedictorian can say, thank God. We're having a battle now in not just a few school districts and not just in big liberal cities, but literally all over the country on whether it's okay, advisable even, to expose second and third and fourth graders to really explicit sexual information. Sexual information that goes beyond just, here's how a baby's made, but information about the LGBT community and various practices. Many people have looked at this information and decided, look, this isn't even appropriate for junior high students, but there are schools that are vehemently arguing that it's okay for adults other than parents to share this information with little kids. There have been tremendously emotional arguments over what's in school libraries. Governor DeSantis of Florida went smack into the middle of this controversy, got legislation passed that made it a law in Florida that there's certain material you cannot introduce to very young children. And as I said, these disputes are all over the country. And unfortunately, they're not limited to just this issue of what kind of learning material we can introduce children to. Right now, as I'm sure many of you know, we suddenly have a transgender crisis all over the country. Back in the 1990s, this is an issue that almost nobody talked about or debated because it really wasn't a thing. And now in every school district in America, we're having children, sometimes really young children, who have somehow come to believe, either from the culture they're being exposed to, maybe things that are in popular entertainment, maybe it's material that's on social media, but these are often little boys and little girls who believe that they are actually trapped in the wrong body. we've got little boys saying, I've never felt right, and I think I was supposed to be born a girl, and I'm inside a boy's body. So from now on, I want to be called by female pronouns. And the reverse is also happening. Little girls, some of them at very early ages, telling not their parents, but sometimes teachers or counselors at school that they think they're actually little boys trapped in a girl's body. And the disputes and controversy about this is that parents have found out that there are some school districts and some school boards that are not informing the parents when those little boys and girls are telling teachers or counselors that they're having this problem or this gender dysphoria. My friends, I hope you agree that this is the very time that a child needs his or her parents. This is a very sensitive and in some ways a very dangerous phenomenon. Parents have to be involved. And so we've seen, again, this parental uprising. And it's not just over what a child identifies as. What else does the school do under these circumstances? Well, right here in the Washington, D.C. area, where I do public policy work for the James Dobson Family Institute, we've had a suburban school district in Northern Virginia that had a boy come to them claiming he was a girl and demanding to be able to use the girls' facilities in the school, the girls' restrooms, the girls' showers, and the place where girls change clothes for gyms, for the gym hour. And the school district decided that that boy would be able to use the girls' facilities. Well, within a couple of weeks, the boy had sexually assaulted a girl in the girls' restroom. And the school district, instead of informing parents and making an adjustment in their policy, covered the incident up, sent the boy to a different junior high school where within a couple of weeks he sexually assaulted another young girl. Now, this is outrageous, and it's caused a tremendous controversy. And in fact, members of that county school board have been defeated in a recent election, and parents are demanding reform in those schools. So we can see now that as a country, we've gone from controversies 30 years ago about school prayer and whether a Bible was okay in a classroom or whether students could organize a Christian club. And all of those things are no longer controversies. In fact, many schools won't allow Christian clubs, but the vacuum is being filled with things that would have been unimaginable. And parents all over America, inner city parents, suburban parents, have had to respond to this crisis and step up in order to save their children. So I want to thank those parents this week as we talk about this issue. But I want to talk to those of you who have hesitated to get involved. And I want to remind you of something. Those children, your children and your grandchildren, they were given to us and given to you by God. We have a moral responsibility to protect those children and those grandchildren. Now, I think almost every parent in America is willing to literally physically put their body on the line to protect their children. I see stories every week almost, you probably do too, of a parent that has protected their child from a wild animal or has allowed a criminal to harm them in order to protect their children. Well, here we're not talking necessarily about physical harm. We're talking about harm to a child's heart and soul, to the child's mind. We have a moral obligation to protect those children from these influences and from an educational establishment that is often promoting a radical secular agenda on our children that we cannot stand by and allow them to do without fighting back. So my message to you today is do not be afraid. Pray about this, but remind yourself that you have a moral obligation, if you haven't already done it, to protect your children and your grandchildren. But even more than that, I want to assure you, you're not alone. The James Dobson Family Institute exists for a moment like this. Dr. Dobson has prepared material on these questions. He's done many, many radio programs on family talk about them. I hope you've heard them. If you haven't, search for them and listen to them now. I've been involved in some of those broadcasts, and I know he's planning to do many more in the future. We have material you can get to help you in these battles. So go to our website, get this material, the educational material, educate yourself. Know that we will stand with you. There are Christian legal firms that will represent you if you face a legal challenge because you fulfill God's responsibility of protecting the children and grandchildren that he gave to you. So be of good cheer, be bold, be courageous. Know that God's standing with you. Know that the James Dobson Family Institute is standing with you. And tune in next week as we continue to dedicate ourselves to empowering you to defend faith, family, and freedom. Thank you for being with us.
Subscribe to Gary Bauer's Defending Faith, Family, and Freedom, where you find your favorite podcasts. Just hit the subscribe button to ensure you receive every episode.